Exceptions to the 10% premature distribution penalty. That's what we're going to talk about here today at the Heritage Wealth Planning YouTube channel. Part 2, I guess, of our Q&A, if you will, or suggested, something like that. So don't forget to subscribe, as always. Comments, questions, concerns. Thumbs up. No, not thumbs down. The other way. Thumbs up always help me with the YouTube algorithm because we're all controlled by the algorithm. All right, so here James writes in. He says, Josh, I enjoy all your videos and have a suggestion. I've never seen a video in which you mention the age 55 rule for 401k distributions. It seems that in certain situations it might be better to do this instead of doing a Roth IRA conversion, especially if you are single and plan on waiting till age 70 to collect Social Security and keep their taxes down, or maybe eliminate them outright. Maybe a detailed video just about the 55 rule. So yeah, all right, let's talk about that. It's a good point here. So remember, for any qualified retirement plan, being an IRA or an ERISA plan, which is the 401k, 403b, TSP, 457, am I missing anything? There are exceptions to you having access to this cash without the 10% penalty. And the first exception is you hit 59.5. So once you're 59.5, you no longer have the 10% penalties. That's the first exception. Everyone kind of gets that. But there are other exceptions as well. So remember, we're talking about avoiding the penalty. We're not talking about avoiding the tax, my friends. You're going to pay tax. Someone's going to pay tax on money that has yet to be taxed. So I'm going to look at straight from the IRS's website here, and we'll write some down. Retirement topics, exceptions to the tax on early distributions. Most retirement plan distributions are subject to income tax and may be subject to an additional 10% additional tax. Generally, the amounts on an individual withdrawals from an IRA or retirement plan before hitting 59.5 are called early or premature distributions. Individuals must pay an additional 10% early withdrawal tax unless an exception applies, all right? And so they talk about the distribution will not be subject to the 10% additional early distribution penalty in the following circumstances. And they talk about qualified plans being one rule, one column here, and IRA, simple IRA, and SEP plans being another. So age, 59.5, there's exception. You don't pay a 10% premature distribution on that. And they even give the IRC, the Internal Revenue Code section. And 72T, you might be familiar with 72T, but that's part of the 72T code, that once you hit 59.5, you no longer have a 10% penalty. Automatic enrollment, permissive withdrawals from a plan with automatic enrollment feature. I don't even know what that means, but yes for simple IRAs and yes for qualified plans. Yeah, so I'm not sure what that is. That's a section 414W. I don't know what it is. Corrective distributions. Corrective distributions and associated earnings of excess contributions, excess aggregate contributions, and excess deferrals made timely. Timely, of course, is in the eyes of the good folks at the IRS. Death of the participant / IRA owner. Yep, that is an exception under, again, 72T. Disability, total and permanent disability of the participant IRA owner. Yep. Domestic relations, what's called a qualified domestic relations order, a quadro. Yep, that is also exempt from the 10% penalty, even if you're under the age of 59.5. Education, qualified higher education expenses. Here's where we got a difference. For qualified retirement plans, 401ks, etc., no. You do not get a post premature distribution penalty exception for qualified higher education expenses, but you do for IRAs, which would be a reason to roll your money into an IRA. Don't do it if you're in Maryland or Rhode Island. Again, equal payments. This is typically what people think of the 72T. We get equalized payments. That is exception to the 59.5 rule of 10%. And we'll talk about annuities, how that affects annuities too, because I think that gets overlooked a lot, because annuity is an equal payment. All right, and if it's equal payments, 72T, that means you don't have to pay the 10% penalty, even if you're under the age of 59.5. Employer stock option plan, dividend pass-through, yep, in terms of the 401k. Home buyers, qualified first-time home buyers, up to $10,000. No on the 401k and 403b and TSP. Yes on the IRA. So two reasons why the IRA is more beneficial. You don't pay the 10% penalty for a qualified home buyer or qualified higher education expenses either. Let's see, if the IRS put a levy on it, yeah. Medical amount of unreimbursed medical expenses, 10% if under the age of 65. So if it's 10% or more than your AGI and you're under the age of 65, you do get a exemption from the 10% penalty. Military, certain... the medical part too. Health insurance premiums paid while unemployed. Health insurance premiums paid by unemployed. It doesn't say anything other than yes for IRAs, no for 401k. So essentially, I'm unemployed and I have taken money out of my IRA to pay for my health insurance premiums. That would be exempt from the 10% penalty. That's interesting again, but it's not the same for 401k. So there's 3 reasons the IRA would be preferable to a 401k. Military, certain distribution of qualified military reservists called to active duty. Yep, for IRAs and 401ks. Returned IRA contributions, and again, this is the 60-day thing. If withdrawn by extended due date of return, is that the 60-day thing? I don't know. But for IRAs, if you return the IRA contribution, if it's withdrawn by the extended due date of the return, that is a void. And earnings on those return contributions, that is not exempt from the 59.5 rule. You still have to pay 10% penalty on that. Here's a big one. Separation from service. This is what I want to talk about. Separation from service. The employee separates from service during or after the year he or she reaches 55 years old. Age 50 for public safety employees of a state or political subdivision of a state in a governmental defined benefit plan with 2 asterisks. Now, I've talked about this before, but I want to stress it again. The employee separates from service during or after the year in which the employee turns 55 years old or 50 for public safety employees. Now, why do I want to stress this? Because if you turn 50 as a police officer, for instance, the money that you have in your defined benefit plan, but now your TSP or government defined contribution plan as of, I think it was 2015, are both exempt from the 10% early withdrawal penalty. If you're retired from, used to be in Harrisonburg, Virginia, Merck was a big thing up there in Elkton, Virginia. If you separate from service after the age of, when you hit the age of 55, during or after the year in which the employee, so once you hit 55, if you separate from service at 55 or beyond, your Merck 401k plan or your Coors 401k plan or wherever you work is also available to you. You don't have to be a public safety employee, just be anyone, just Joe Schmo. You have access to it without the 10% penalty as long as you separate from service after the age of 55. So one of the reasons it would be nice to roll in a previous employer's 401k to your current employer. Let's just say you work 25 years at Merck, and I say you got $400,000 in your Merck 401k. You leave to go work at Coors. So you're 54 years old. You leave to go work at Coors. All these financial advisors are knocking on your door and say, hey, man, roll over your IRA, roll over your 401k to an IRA, roll over your 401k to an IRA. And you say, no, I'm going to roll it my 401k from Merck. I'm going to roll it to Coors, to their 401k. And they say, no, don't do that. That's crazy. Roll it to an IRA, roll it to an IRA. You say, no, because I only plan on working at Coors for 1 year. And then when I leave Coors, I'll be separated from service at 55 years old. My Merck 401k is now in my Coors 401k, and thus it's accessible without the 10% penalty. I'm telling you right now, big deal. Let's see. Non-qualified 457B plans. Governmental 457B distributions are not subject to the 10% additional tax except for distributions attributable to rollovers from another type of plan or IRA. So that's a 457 plan. If it's attributable to a rollover to an IRA, that would be subject to the 10% penalty. If it has nothing to do with the IRAs, it's not. Simple IRA distributions incur a 25% additional tax instead of 10% if the distribution is made within the first 2 years of participation. So got to be careful with simple IRAs. Never been a huge fan of simple IRAs, frankly, but all right. And then finally, the 2 asterisks for qualified public safety employees, effective December 31st, 2015. The exception for public safety employees who are age 50 or over is expanded to include specified federal law enforcement officers, Customs Border Protection officers, federal firefighters, and air traffic controllers. Also, the restriction that only defined benefit plans qualify, so your pension plans qualify, is limited. Thus, an exemption is now allowed for defined contribution plans or other type of government plans such as a TSP. And whoever qualifies for defined public safety is a police officer, a fireman, an EMT, and those kind of things. So that's how it works. So if you're over the age of, if you're 55 or older, and you're just some guy digging ditches, you have access to your 401k without a 10% penalty, as long as that is when you separate from service. If you rolled your 401k over to an IRA and you're 54, and now you're saying, hey, I'm over 55 now, let me have access to that, it doesn't work. It has to be in the employer plan when you separate from service. Again, if you're a public safety employee, as long as you fit the definition of a public safety employee, which we just talked about, here is 50 or over. That's a big deal, man. That's a big, big deal. So I hope that helps. There's a lot going on there. And I put links to the show notes on this before when I did the public safety employee benefit. But the same thing's applicable here. It's just on the IRS's website. So just keep that in mind. Be careful of rolling your 401k over to an IRA if you think you might not stay at your company beyond the age of 55. If you do, then you've leaving money on the table that you could have access to with taxable, but not the penalty. All right, as always, comments, questions, thoughts, thumbs up help me, and don't forget to subscribe, and we'll see you next time. Thanks, guys.